Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Trace Pirtle here. We got Randy Brown. We are coming to you live today. Now, whether or not it's going to be live when you see it or not, that's a whole different story. Anyway, it is about 1:30 in the afternoon on May the 23rd, 2024. And Randy and I are the co-founders of Nomads of the Noetic. And today we're going to be talking in our third podcast. It's third podcast, isn't it, Randy?
Number three.
Number three. All right. So again, we continue to be on a roll. We are consistent.
That's
we may
right.
not be very proficient, but we are consistent.
Yes.
All right. We're gonna get better as we're going along.
Number three special.
Number three is special, right? So
It's a prime
today,
number.
perfect, perfect. So today we're going to be talking about just at a 10,000 foot level, this notion of the law of attraction and manifesting and maybe even manifesting wealth. Does that sound like our topic for today, Randy?
I like it. Let's talk
All right.
about it.
Okay, sounds good. So, maybe one of the first questions that we can kick around is why are we even talking about the law of attraction? The so what? Why is this going to be important for anybody that would be watching this? Now, we know that it's a popular topic and it's been out there for a while, but why is it relevant today? Do you have any thoughts on that yourself?
I do. As I was thinking about this earlier, Trace, I was thinking about some universal needs or wants,
Mm-hmm.
some things that are common, I think, with all people. We all seek in some ways to find comfort. We seek security. We seek love. We seek that human contact, that human bond with others. And, I think all of those things probably are in some ways kind of lead us to this summary term that, well, I just kind of like to think about it as contentment or happiness. And I think that may be the best summary term of that might be the best way to summarize it for everyone. And it is the thing that Buddha referred to it as happiness. Now, happiness is not just running around with a smile on your face. That's not the point. But the point is all those other little things that it leads to, and that contentment in life, and that absence of that rough road. Or no, let me put that differently. The absence of the feeling of that rough road.
Mm-hmm.
The absence of the feeling of that barrier that's always in front of you. So it's removing that feeling that we always seem to have that something's against us. And I think the removal of that is kind of what we're talking about. And I think a lot of times we think of it, we have to think of it sometimes in terms of wealth, because wealth does provide for you comfort and power and the release of just that want of and that need. Those are dark times when you don't have money to provide for your family.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have money for that security. And to remove that alone, it is a great burden that is lifted off people. But I think when you said that 10,000 mile view is a really better way to look at this, because I don't know that I could ever promise anyone that you're going to have $1 million. Although I can tell you how to get it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I can tell you that, but I can't promise that to anyone. But I can promise that we can lead you down a pathway where there's potential and where you live a life of potential and hope. I think that's that 10,000 mile view for me, is living that kind of life rather than that life of despair and hopelessness.
Yeah. Yeah. when I think about, and when I've studied, the law of attraction back, most of us that are, have any degree of entrepreneurial blood. We've all read Napoleon Hill's, Think and Grow Rich. That went back, I think it was like 1937 or 1939 published date. And then in 2006, Rhonda Byrne makes it real popular with, The Secret, not only the book, but the movie that came out. And, it's intriguing because it blends in, with a lot of different things, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, philosophy, psychology. It blends a lot of different disciplines, self-help, self-development, improvement, and so on. But this notion that like attracts like, that to me is sort of a principle that applies whether we call it the law of attraction or not. Because it's really not a law like we think of laws of physics or thermodynamics, unless, now we'll talk about something on that a little later, which it could be correlated with. But it's not really a law. It's something that's more of a philosophy. It's more of a metaphysical thing, right? It's a belief system. And so, just in terms of the notion that like attracts like, if we're positive, we're going to attract positive. If we're negative, we're going to attract that. Do you see that in your own life? Have you seen that professionally and personally yourself?
I see that both in my field of study and I also see it in my life. I mean, I can trace that in my life.
Right.
Of course, in anything that I've done and anything that I've actually succeeded at, I can trace that. I had a discussion with my grandson last night, and I divulged to him some truth that he did not yet know, which was he's not struggling in high school. He just doesn't like it. And I kind of, identify with that. And I
was going to say, he's in good company.
Yeah. And it may be even more so that way today. I don't really know. I'm not a high school student now, but things I hear, maybe it's more problematic. But I told him, I said, you may not realize this, but I was a student just about like you. And I said, I graduated by the skin of my teeth, and not because of lack of skill necessarily, just lack of interest. And I told him, I said, that's not what's going to limit your pathway going forward. What's going to limit your pathway is your belief and the belief of those around you. And so to trace it in my life, the reason why I continued in school really had nothing to do with my skill or expertise or knowledge or brain power, but rather it had to do with things like my mother's incredible, strong belief in the child she gave birth to, that he could do anything he wanted to do. Not only did she believe that, she believed it like an evangelist, and she told me that all the time until I believed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really help it because she was so good at it that you just kind of had to believe it. And it built in me this idea that I could just do anything. And when you have that kind of idea in your head rolling around all the time, you're willing to try.
Yeah.
And I like to discuss with my students in the past at the university about teaching students, that's one thing we can leave them with. The other is we can leave them with this idea of false despair. Mm-hmm. When there's every indication they can do something, but they have no hope that they'll ever achieve anything because they don't have anybody around them that believes in them, and they don't believe in themselves. And when you don't believe in yourself and no one else does, you won't try anything.
Right.
And so it's perfectly clear you'll never succeed because you won't even try.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's how it played out in my life, is that kind of thing. But it's interesting, even when you talk about my field of applied behavior analysis, you think about the simplest technique we use, which is positive reinforcement.
Mhm.
So when we apply that to another person, to get them to do a behavior that we consider to be a more positive behavior, we apply a reward to that. And technically, science teaches us that they're more likely to produce that good behavior again the next time. So even scientifically, when we surround someone with that positive atmosphere, positive reinforcer, they're going to be more likely to produce that behavior again in the future, on and on. So even in that kind of sense, this really does work.
Yeah.
That if you can do this to others, but the key, even in that kind of science, and this is how it relates to what we're talking about, is you can't continue to reinforce somebody forever. Eventually, that has to become part of them internally.
Mhm.
They have to build that positive reinforcement or positive nature in themselves and embrace it, or it won't stay. Because if they're not self-reinforcing and surrounding their own spirit and heart with positive nature, then they'll stop when the people around them are no longer there.
Yeah.
So it comes down to some point where that individual has to build that belief
Yeah.
in themselves. I think it is important to have help in the beginning sometimes. If you're struggling, get help. Get those around you to help. You know, that's a great way to start, but you're going to build that strength soon to do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'm sure you've seen the same thing, in your teaching and your own life. If someone says, I want to learn how to do what you're doing, let's just say, whether they say, hey, I want to become a professor, I want to run a marathon, I want to do whatever. If it's something that you've already done, you may be in a better position to coach them, right? To help them get to the top of the mountain that you've already been to and back a few times.
That's right.
But, right, I've always found that there are two preconditions really that individual has to bring to the table themselves. You can't give it to them. Or if you can, it's not easy. And so those two conditions, I think, are a desire to change. They've got to want to change. They've got to want to have whatever it is that they're coming to you for. And the other thing is a whole lot tougher, and they have to believe it. So this is right along with what we're talking about. I think with the law of attraction, with self-fulfilling prophecies, or just, forget about all of the terms, is just, what do you want? Right? And if they say, I want to become, a university professor, well, we've got a whole series of steps that we can go through, but those steps are really secondary to getting down to asking that person, how bad do you really want this? Are you willing to not only see it in your mind, visualize it, see yourself walking down the stage, right? Walking across the stage, crowd goes wild, you're congratulated as new doctor, that visualization is a component of it. But between that visualization being realized and where they're at now, there is that wide gap, isn't there? There's a lot of sweat equity that you got to put into it. All your friends are out there partying and stuff, and you got to be sitting there cracking the books, or you got to be writing papers. And so a desire is one component of it. You have to want it. But the other, almost more important, is you have to believe that you can get it. And sometimes, if people have had backgrounds unlike yours, where they didn't have a mom or a dad, that was reinforcing, that believed in them to allow you to believe in yourself. Not everybody's had that, have they?
Nope.
And so they've only got to believe in it. This is what I've always found with my own work, whether it was counseling, coaching, teaching, or otherwise. And I'm sure you're going to agree with this. is they only have to have just a little bit of belief in themselves and enough belief in us as the mentor, right? As the instructor or the teacher or whatever, or is just the co-adventurer, the co-nomad on this pathway that you always talk about. We can help them get to the top of the mountain that they want to get to if they've got the desire and they have the belief that we can help them get there. If
Sure.
they don't have those preconditions, I don't care. I mean, we can visualize all we want to, but the probability of realizing or manifesting something they want, I think, is pretty low.
Yeah. Trace, you mentioned that a lot of people aren't as fortunate as me, and hopefully a lot of people who had a mother that believed in them. And I know that that's true. But I want to mention real quick my favorite book, and I know I've told you about it before, but it's Words That Hurt and Words That Heal, How to Choose Words Wisely and Well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's written by Rabbi Joseph Telushkin.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2/3 of the book is written about words that hurt.
Yeah.
And in that, when I read that book, and I've read it several times, I read it and I feel guilty because I realize how oftentimes I've used my words in ways that were unwise and not well thought out. And I likely have harmed a student along the way by flippantly saying something.
Mm-hmm.
But the good thing about the book is that last part that talks about words that heal. Because in that last part, Rabbi Telushkin talks about the fact that it only takes one person to believe in that child or that student or that individual. But when he uses the word believe, he means you really have to believe.
Right.
Because when you really believe, then you can get that person to really believe.
Mm-hmm.
And when that person really believes in themselves, it washes away all of those times their spirit was stepped on. And then they build that belief in themselves and they walk forward and they achieve whatever they need to achieve.
Yeah.
So one person can change the life of another individual by carefully selecting your words and building up an individual. And I think as teachers, as fellow humans on a pathway, we are given the greatest responsibility to do that very thing. That has to be one of the greatest callings a person can do. I also wanted to mention, and this is not from his book, but I was thinking about that gap you were talking about. Because if you build that belief and that person grabs hold of it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a gap between that belief of walking across that stage, or where you are now and walking across that stage, I always think about that gap like this. What you have to be is a bulldog.
Mm-hmm.
And I know everybody's had this experience of playing with a dog when they're an adolescent, and that dog grabbing hold of a rope, and the refusal of that dog to let go.
Yeah.
Of course, we're encouraged to play with them that way. That's part of they need that play. But if you've ever had the opportunity to do that with a bulldog, they just don't let go.
Yeah.
And I mean, and sometimes before long, they're stronger than you are, and they simply won't let go. And, when they're younger, you can win, but of course, you shouldn't win every time. When they're a little older, you don't win. They
Right.
win, they take over the rope, and when they're ready to play tug of war again, they come back. I always think about that gap time
Right.
is you build your belief first. And then during that gap time is when you have bulldog tenacity
Yeah.
and you never let go.
Yeah.
And it's that belief that's going to allow you to have that tenacity,
Yeah.
because you will grip a hold of that and you just won't give up. And it will happen.
Yeah.
That's what Bulldog Tenacity does.
Right.
You continue to show up every day because you refuse to give up your dream.
Yeah.
And there's no choice in the universe other than for that to happen. So anyway, I just wanted to add that to that gap, because I think that gap is the crucial period. Every period's crucial.
Right.
Every moment in that pathway is crucial, but what we need is to help people build those skills that they need in each period during that time to get there.
Yeah.
We need to help people get the tools that they need to make that journey, because that's what it is.
Right.
I was listening last night to update on Mount Everest climbers.
Mm-hmm.
I like to listen to that in May because it's, right now it's the peak climbing season. And I don't know why it fascinates me, partially because it's one thing I don't aspire to. And that's a good thing. I've chosen wisely on this thing. I'm not going to try to attempt Mount Everest, but I think about those that do. And I wonder about them. And I think about how is it that that's an endeavor that takes years.
Yeah.
To prepare for. And then it takes the actual risking of your life to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many accomplish it, but you know what? They rarely accomplish it alone. That's interesting to me that an Englishman or an American will summit once with a Sherpa who has summited 30 times.
Yeah.
Okay. When we don't talk about the Sherpa, we talk about the Englishman. I'm not taking away from either one of them. Both of it's magic. But I do think about that when I think about that person that one day said, that's my dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
I aspire to that, and then put that in motion. Well, and I think about that, I really believe this. If that's what I chose to do, I could do it.
Right.
I'm glad I'm not choosing that. But if I chose to,
Yeah.
I could do that. That's how strongly I believe in that process. I believe I don't think there's limits on this. I really don't. I think there is. And I like that old phrase, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
And sometimes the way is a mystery. But I do believe that.
I like what you're saying, and I agree with it about 99%, maybe 99.9%. And here's the little bit that where I maybe don't agree as much. So I totally agree with you, right? Somebody is sitting down there at the bottom, now forget about even being at the base of Mount Everest. Let's say we're just looking at a picture at Mount Everest, and somebody says, I want to go there. Okay, great, right? So the dream begins at that point. The vision begins at that point. You can take a person through, guided imageries, and they can see themselves, at base camp 1 and climbing base camp 2 and everything. So, it becomes, it becomes reality in the mind. But where the transition comes is the first time that you climb up a hill and then you fall back down and you realize it hurts. That's when the tenacity begins. At the first sign of defeat, right? Yes. Tenacity begins at that point, or a person quits. And what else is happening at that time? When tenacity is building, so is resilience. Right? The person is becoming more and more resilient, and they realize that whether they've got a Sherpa or whether they've got a whole team there that's prepared them, they are ultimately alone. That is an existential concept, isn't it? Right? They are ultimately alone, and we can talk about spiritual beliefs and God's with me all the time or whatever. But at that moment, when you are trudging up a hill, or whether you're going from one semester to the next en route to the doctoral degree, you are ultimately alone at that point. And that's when, right? And that's when people really figure out, hey, how much do I really want this? Am I really willing to sacrifice in order to manifest what my dream is and what I see in my mind's eye? And where I agree that we are nearly limitless in our human potential. One of the personality and counseling theorists, Alfred Adler, talked about freedom within limits. So, so we've got all of this freedom that we can do whatever we want to, but we've got some limitations. So if right now at my age and stage of life, if I said, you know what, I'm a retiree, I'm coaching, I'm consulting, we're working together on this stuff, and I think in my spare time I would like to become a professional jockey. Could I do it? Well, a jockey, and as in a horse rider, right? I could go out, and maybe I could ride a horse around. Of course, I'd have to learn how to ride a horse first. But I'm not a big guy, but at 5'9" and 175, not many professional jockeys that are any good are my size, right?
Yeah, you need to be about 120 max.
There you go. There you go. And, and so there are some practical limitations to what I would desire to do, no matter how much I would see myself, winning the Kentucky Derby. I can see it now. I'm riding along, right? And the crowd goes wild. The reality of that happening, no matter how much I think about it and no matter how much I visualize it, approaches zero, right? That probability approaches zero. And there are very few things that are zero probabilities. But when we find that, that barrier, then you've got to ask yourself, what would I really be willing to do in order to actually achieve that goal? Well, I wouldn't want to starve myself down to 120 pounds or 115. Exactly. That's right. So to me, there's, it's not just about thoughts becoming things, because that's something that's important in the law of attraction, isn't it? Right. And in what we know with quantum mechanics and, this whole thing is that if everything is pure energy, or everything is made up of pure energy, including our thoughts, then it does make logical sense that thoughts can become things. And we can manifest things more so than what we ever thought possible. But again, it's not like we've got the magic wand and we just snap our fingers and say, abracadabra, this is what I want, and then sit back, and take a nap and wait for it to happen when we wake up. It doesn't work like that, does it?
Nope.
Right. So you've got to be willing to put in the time. But if we are willing to do that, the tenacity that we experience, the resilience that we experience, just naturally, it's part of the logical, natural consequence of like attracting like. The doctoral degree is waiting for that person that's out there watching this right now. The $1 million is out there, the $10 million, whatever is out there, it is attracting them. And it may just take a little bit of time. The answer to this question, and most people that will be watching this in the future, but what do you call the person who graduates last in their doctoral course or their doctoral program after 10 or 15 years? What do we call them? Doctor. That's it. Right? That is as practical as it gets. Whatever they had to do, they had to be the bulldog to get through that program, didn't they?
That's right.
They could be the last one. It don't matter. The crowd still goes wild. They don't know what your grade point average was. They didn't know what the challenges were. They know nothing about that other than you made it. Congratulations, doctor.
They don't care.
They don't care. Nope. nope. And in fact, they probably even respect that person more because they did persevere.
Very likely.
That's it. They've got more to bring back in to share with people that are struggling just like they did.
Yes.
You got street credibility.
Yes. I had that conversation with a doctoral person the other day, a doctor, who proceeded to tell me, oh, they went to postdoctoral studies and they did this and they did that and how good they were. And I thought, well, they still have the same title as me.
Yep.
Because nobody cares.
Right.
They just don't. I mean, I wish they did, but that's not what that's it. And no, I don't wish they did. It's not what's important, actually. There are a lot of things that are important, but even that title's not what's important.
Right.
And maybe the one who thinks the title's what's important is the one that's having the problem. I don't know that, but anyway, yes, no, nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody cares.
It is the journey that makes the person. It's not the ultimate outcome.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Right.
Part of it is what I've learned in the process. So, do I have $1 million? No. Did I try? Kind of. Does it make me better that I tried? Actually, yes.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's not to achieve that goal. So like let's say, going back to Everest, let's say I decided I was going to climb Everest. You're correct. I would never get to the top. Very unlikely. And likely if I tried, I would die in the process. During the death zone. I mean, a lot of people do.
Yeah, it was a good day to die.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
But the truth is, where I sit right now, I can't even go to base camp. And most people can't because you can't breathe. So, but had I tried to go to the top of Mount Everest and put my energy toward that, I bet I could go to the base camp.
Yeah.
And that journey to get there would be what makes me the person I would have been had I tried that. And like I said, I'm glad that that's not my goal. But, when I think about people trying to achieve goals and they set a goal that, okay, maybe it's too high. Maybe they wanted to have $1 million in the bank by the time they were 45. Okay. By the way, I want to say again, I can tell you how to do that.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you I did. I can just tell you how to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if you're way younger than me. Okay. But even if you're my age, I can tell you how to do it. But anyway, if you're way younger than me, please talk to me. I'll tell you right now. But let's say that's somebody's goal. Let's say I have that discussion with my grandson that I want you to have this as your goal. And let's say he turns 30 and his goal is to have $1 million and he doesn't, but he has $100,000 in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's pretty darn good for a 30-year-old.
You bet. You bet.
If he has that much money in the bank when he's 30, look at the options that open up for that person at that point. But see, it's not even the amount of money that the person has. What he's learned about the process of doing that, the discipline,
mm-hmm.
the learning to make wise choices about when you can afford something and when it's smarter to save some. That's what that journey taught him.
Yeah.
But I still believe that when the person sets that as their goal, if that is their goal, they will achieve it. I want to tell you real quick, Trace. I worked with a guy a long time ago, and I was probably 18. I worked at this place called TG&Y.
Oh yeah.
Similar to Walmart now, I guess, but smaller scale. I worked in the sporting goods department. This guy was probably a year or so older than me. And he and I were in there together. And of course, we talked all the time. Showing people fishing rods and shotguns. Anyway, it was kind of a fun job, which I think young people need to realize that working is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, plus they pay you.
Right.
So it's kind of fun. And that's how you get money to start on your pathway to actually have your money work for you.
Right.
You know, first you have to have money before it work for you. But anyway, this friend of mine, he told me one time, and I remember this so specifically. He said, my goal in life is to be rich. I remember that. And
Yeah.
Trace, that is so long ago.
Yeah.
Because I'm old now, right? That's so long ago. And I don't even remember what I told him. I think I didn't know what my goals were, maybe at 18. Not sure. I do want to tell you that he and I have both achieved our goals, though, because
Right.
eventually mine had became about wanting to be a professor and wanting to work with students and change the lives of people with disabilities in particular in
Yeah.
schools. Guess what happened to my friend? And you don't have to guess. He got rich.
Yep.
It's exactly what he did.
Right.
Now,
Yep.
and I can even tell you how he did it. I mean, I know this story. I still know him. Now, I don't know if he's happy or not. That's not even the issue, but I do know that single-mindedness can do something.
You bet.
But I also want to caution people with single-mindedness that it's not just that goal.
Right.
Because one single goal all by itself can be hollow. Because there are other parts. There are other parts to actually making things come to you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's much more humane than that. Because yes, you can get rich by doing terrible, terrible things.
Yep.
But that is not at all what we're talking about. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, my friend didn't do that, and I didn't mean to indicate that at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I do know how, but it wasn't like that. He didn't do terrible things, but you could do that. All right. Sorry, Trace.
No. That's, this conversation is really making me think. And we know this we're doing this. We're going to be doing this in the joint coaching consulting that we're going to be doing. I've done it in the past. You've done it, I'm sure, in your way in the past. But if someone comes to us and says, this is, we know that nothing ever happens unless somebody perceives a problem. So that's the entering spot. Somebody perceives a problem. Either I want something, I don't have it, or I need something, I don't have it, So somebody's perceiving a problem in their life. So once they come in and they say, I want this, and we clarify what that want or what that goal is, I've learned over too many years of the risk of not asking one question and just going on and saying, okay, hey, I'm here for you. You're not here for me. Let's help you get what you want. And that one question or series of questions leads us to, is this person's want something that they're attached to, or are they committed to it? Those are two really different concepts. So a person can be attached to a want, and let's just use hypothetically, a friend who says, I want to become rich. Okay, fair enough. I'm going to help you get to the top of that mountain. Well, along the way, they fall out. They keep, I don't have $1 million, I got $500,000, right? And then they lose half of that, and then they start over from base camp again. Somewhere along the line, they quit. And I've seen people, fortunately not too many, but some who quit on their own lives. They took their own life because they were attached to a goal that they weren't going to either be able to accomplish or they weren't willing to do what it would take in order to accomplish it. And so not being able to attain that goal that they were attached to, it was like, well, the choice then is I'd rather not even be alive. So we've got to get to the bottom of, if anybody is watching this and they're saying, hey, I want this at all costs. I'm willing to give up my family, my health, my, everything. I'm willing to sell my soul at the crossroads, right? Well, wait a minute. I don't know that I want to help you do that. That's not my job. But if somebody says, I ask them a question, all right, what's the worst thing that could happen if you don't become rich, if you don't get to the top of Mount Everest, if you don't earn that doctoral degree within the next 5 years? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? If they say, well, it's not the end of the world, right? I'll adjust, I'll adapt. Maybe it wasn't for me. That doesn't mean that they're compromising their vision. Doesn't mean that they're compromising. It just tells me that they are realistic in what they're about to embark on. Hey, at that point, if I'm hearing those kind of things, I'm committed to this goal. I'm willing to work hard. I believe I can do it. I believe you can help me get there. I'm all in. It's 110%. You agree with that?
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm out on the first and I'm in on the second one.
Exactly.
And because you know that our genuine commitment here is to share experience and knowledge to benefit someone. I'm not interested in helping somebody go down a dark pathway.
Right.
I won't do that. And if that's, and I'm not gonna hold your hand down that pathway. I'll help you out of a hole.
Yeah.
I'll help you out of a spiral downwards. But I'm not gonna participate in taking you down a pathway. As you said, if you come to me and say you want to climb Mount Everest, and if you're me, I'm going to say that's probably not likely. Let's look at another goal. Or let's look at, maybe you can climb Mount Scott in Oklahoma. Yeah. And we'll drive you halfway up first. We can look at some other things that, we'll start somewhere else. I can get you down a pathway that really is something that's going to be beneficial and helpful to you and make you proud and everything else that you want.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna step off on something that's going to harm you or on something that you really can't live without.
Yeah.
That you feel like life's a failure over, or that you're going to be seen as a failure. No, I'm going to help you figure out what that is that you really need.
Yeah.
And something that really does fulfill your dream. And Trace, I think that one of the things that helps me, or has helped me, and it is something I don't know about you, but it's something that I work on daily, and I always have. And I think partially because you just have to do this. People have to do this, but I exercise getting negative thoughts away from me.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't want to entertain them for myself. I don't want anybody else to give them to me either. But I work on myself about that. I mentioned to you that I was hauling dirt around yesterday and wanting to plant flowers and plants, and I didn't get the plants planted. This morning I was thinking I didn't get the plants planted, but what I should have been thinking was, but I got that dirt right close to where I need to have it now. So
Right.
This evening, when the sun's a little bit less intense, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to plant those plants, and they're going to be beautiful, and I'm giving them life right in my backyard.
Yep.
I really think it's important that's a first step, is to shield ourselves away from those negative thoughts, and especially when they're about us.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's about you, and like if I have to use that same cheesy excuse, and I've said this about myself, and I got to stop, but I say, "Oh, I got a black thumb. I'll just kill that plant. Well, no, I shouldn't say that.
Right.
I should say, this plant is going to prosper in my care.
Right.
And I believe it.
Yep.
I mean, that's what you do first is you get rid of that negative thought and then start believing in the fact that, you know what? And it's not that hard, Trace.
Yeah.
They put an app on your phone that tells you what's wrong with your plant. You just follow it. Or you can just look it up.
Right.
Needs full sun or shade. Put it in the right spot. Give it water when it says give it water. Okay, I can do this. I believe in myself. And you know what? This plant probably is smarter than I know it is. And as long as I do what it needs, it's going to thrive. So get rid of these negative thoughts. And one more thing I was thinking, Trace, along those same lines, because I know that we want to help people start on this pathway. And this is something I've been really serious about lately. And actually, you're way more serious about this than me. But social media.
Wait a minute. Are we talking about somebody else? I'm the guy that just barely got back to Facebook.
This is why you're better about it than me.
Yeah, I couldn't even spell Facebook.
Exactly.
I learned how to spell Facebook, and now I'm just trying to relearn it.
Well, because I'm on Facebook all the time.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking at it. And you know what I discovered one day while I was going through stuff? I discovered that there was post after post about negative political comments from both sides.
Right.
And one after another.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi this, Trump this, Biden this. I mean, just back and forth and back and forth. And you know, when I was looking at it, I was thinking about how heavy that made my spirit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it wasn't about political ideology either way for me. It was their words.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the political stuff. It was other weird stuff that over the years I just clicked on something and said, I like this. And by the way, like stupid things like marbles and other things. And so I've been really serious about it. I've gone through my Facebook accounts or all my likes and stuff that whatever I've joined these groups, and I got rid of anything that doesn't give me a positive message.
Right.
If and when I look at it, it's not going to say something negative to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't need help being negative.
Right. Right.
And when the TV's on, I don't need help from somebody else who's just blabbing their mouth about something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that information. I remember I used to have a preacher that said, garbage in, garbage out.
Right. Gigo.
Yeah. And that may be true. And I just think about one of my kids asked me the other day, I had the TV on. And she said, why are you watching that? And I said, it's just company. Well, what? Am I afraid of myself?
Yeah.
So I turned it off.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? This is better.
Yeah.
It's just me and the dogs and the parrot, and we're all chatting. But I just wanted to say that. And I know you have some other steps that we need to think about, but that's one for me that is really one of the things that changes everything for me, because I can't build a dream when my head's full of negative stuff.
Yep. Yep.
I gotta get it out. And to me, it's not like meditation. I don't want to empty my head. Okay. And I don't mind that kind of meditation. I understand the purpose of it. And I understand, I really get that but nobody really talks about emptying your head anyway. That's never. They talk about single focus, but they don't talk about emptying your head. You can't empty your head. There's something in there. But I do have to get rid of all of that negative stuff, and I don't want that vacuum. So if I get rid of all that negative influence, it needs to be replaced with something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Positive.
Yeah, exactly. That really aligns with the law of attraction. It does, you know, and it not only aligns with the law of attraction, but it aligns with our well, not just our current understanding and conceptualization of mental illness, but it's been this way. We perpetuate these mindsets. The zeitgeist of the time is that all depression, let's say, okay, is biochemical. Nothing you can really do about it, right? Other than change your biochemistry through meds and maybe a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy thrown in. But the reality is, most of the time, people don't become clinically depressed just overnight. You know, just like Dante's Inferno, right? You know, in the middle of the journey of my life, I came to myself in a dark wood where the straight path was lost. We don't just end up in a dark wood. It's a progression. And so, you know, again, one of the other theorists, it isn't really about personality and counseling theories, but, you know, William Glasser talked about, you're not depressed, you are depressing yourself. And there's so much truth in that. You know, if a person has sort of tendencies, you know, toward melancholy, right? Or you know, just a little bit of that, I'm kind of Eeyore, I'm down in the dumps, I've been bounced. Well, then what do when they get home from work, right? Or they get home from school? They turn on the news, right? They turn on Facebook. And so that continues that downward spiral. And then all of a sudden we wonder, well, how come we have so many people who are suicidal? How come we have so many people who are anxious and depressed? It's because they've made some choices. And nobody wants to hear that these days.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to take on the personal responsibility of, I want to feel better. I want to be happy. I want to have joy. I want to have peace. I want to have all of this stuff. But frankly, I'm not willing to do what it takes and assume the personal responsibility in order to get that. That's something that we can help people with. But if a person comes to us and says, "Hey, I'm in the middle of the pits right now. I'm in the dark wood of my life," we can be the first ones that can reach a hand out and say, "Look, we got to get you out there. We got to turn on the light, and you've got to want to turn on the light, and you've got to believe that it can be turned on." Yeah. Again, those two preconditions. Otherwise, you know, it's like, well, stay in the dark and be happy, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it comes down to that kind of love, confrontation in love.
Yeah.
It says you are much more resilient. You have much more tenacity within you than what you're giving yourself credit for right now. Take one more step. I know the fog bank is coming, is closing in. Right? I know that. I've been there. You've experienced it. I've experienced it. Many of us who have been to the top of some mountain, we've all experienced what it's like to be totally exhausted. And then at the same time, it's one thing if you can still look up and see the peak. But if that fog bank closes in and it gets real steep, it becomes real easy to quit and either fall back off the face or just say, "Hey, I'm going to turn around and go back." That's where the guides, the Sherpa, comes in and says, "Look, there's a handhold over here. There's a foothold over there. Just trust me. Reach one hand over there, one foot there, and just keep going. The summit is there." And so, again, it's, the Sherpa doesn't do it, but the Sherpa can be the guide and can give them some tools. And I think that's all really coaching and consulting, or, if you want to look at it in counseling, or psych terms, they're just tools. I think that's what the law of attraction is, what manifestation is. They're simply tools, some that may or may not work as well for everybody. But it kind of goes to what William James talked about, in modern pragmatism. Basically, if you've got a belief in something and you want to know whether it's true or not, is you test it. Is it practical? Does it work for you? And I think that, you know, whatever nomenclature we use, it's like that. You know, does the law of attraction actually help you get from where you're at now to where you want to be? Right? Are you able to manifest? Can I share just one quick story for you too?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right. Maybe it's two that are associated. So the first time that I actually saw this work in my own life, I'm at Texas A&M International, right? And in 2006, my graduate students and I are actually talking about Rhonda Byrne's book, The Secret. We're talking about all of that in the counseling classes. And so that was at the same time that I first started my coaching and consulting practice. And so I kind of put it in my mind, all right, we're going to test out this, you know, hypothesis that it actually works. I was out at Lake Casablanca. And at that time, I was walking Asia. And here's one lone guy coming around. We're going to intersect at some point there on the pathway. And we just started talking. And he says, "What do you do?" And I told him. And he said, "Well, is that it? You know, you're just a professor." And there was something that was leading that conversation, Randy, because I said, "Well, no, you know, I'm also, you know, starting a human potential coaching and consulting practice." And he says, "Tell me more about that." So I did. He says, "I think I'm interested in being your first client." That to me was like that law of attraction, you know, the manifesting wealth, because it started off, you know, as being a very, very high paying client that just created a ripple effect of more people just like that.
Yeah.
Right. And then the last one happened literally today, right? Or the most recent one today. So I wanted to print out a couple notes for what we're talking about today. My printer died. And so I put the you know, the notes on the flash drive, go over to Office Depot, and here's a guy that prints out the notes, and he says, "Well, what's your podcast about?" And I say, "Well, you know, Dr. Randy Brown and I were talking about this. It goes back way, way, way. You know, it's Nomads of the Noetic." And he says, "I'm interested." He says, "I'm a musician. My wife is a music therapist. Everything that you're talking about sounds like exactly what I want to be part of."
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And that was simply because I had made a conscious decision to be looking for like-minded, like-spirited people that might find what we're talking about and what we're part of, you know, as being interesting.
Yeah.
So I, you know, I mean, I can speak to the practical benefits of the law of attraction, manifesting wealth. It is real. At least it's been real in my life. And if we demonstrated we can do it, we can teach somebody else.
You know, the thing that the reason why I'm smiling and almost laughing about that is because I know that people are, well, I'm a natural skeptic too. I mean, I really am. People tell me things and I'm just skeptical. Oh yeah, whatever, you know, and all of us are skeptical. But the thing the reason why I smile and laugh at that is because so many times it happens to me that I hear something like this, and it's over and over again, where it seems like the universe reaches out to people.
Yeah.
And so the universe reaches out to us, and I think sometimes we just don't pay attention to it.
Agreed.
You know, and so I think a lot of times we miss it. And, you know, if you want to relate that back to a Bible verse, which I find interesting, is the one that says, "Be kind to strangers, for in so doing you may entertain angels."
Right.
I've always thought about that verse because I don't know if it really talks about angels. I don't even know what that means at all, except that this idea of be prepared in whatever you're doing in your life, because you may really encounter a magical moment.
Mhm.
And if you're not observant, you may miss it. And so, and it might be an angel,
Right.
or it might be the universe reaching out to you because of this whole idea.
Yeah.
And you might miss it if you're not, if you haven't taken the steps to get rid of the negativity and think about what you really want in your life, to really focus in on those goals, you know, and to build that positivity in yourself and that belief, and to really change your vision. And I think that's another Bible reference, frankly, about we need a new vision.
Yep.
And I always liked the way that terminology is, because it's like, get rid of that old one.
Yeah.
Get a new vision of what your life can be.
Right.
You'll get rid of that old one that you've been fumbling with and get a new one.
Yeah.
And Trace, I also think it's important, and I know you do this and I do this too, and I've always told my students to do this. You need a journal.
Right.
You don't have to be a skilled journalist. I'm not. I don't write things that well or necessarily, or especially in my journal, but I have two. One of them is about teaching. And this one's starting to close down because I'm getting to the end of my teaching career. And it's just where I've written down thoughts where a day went good and this worked well. This student learned this, and days that didn't go so well.
Yeah.
I won't try this again. You know, and
Right.
since I've been training teachers, I want them to keep a teaching journal. But I always told them the other journal's the more important one. Because the other journal is for you to write down those moments where you were genuinely awestruck,
Mm-hmm.
where the universe just pounded you with something beyond your belief.
Yeah.
Whatever it might have been. Those extremely high moments in your life, you got to write them down.
Yeah.
And I tell them that. I said, because, you know, not every day feels that way. But you need to write them down because you need to remember what it feels like.
Yeah.
But I also think it's important to write down things when you have a goal, a vision for what you want to do. Write it down. I'm going to tell you where I used to write them, Trace. This used to drive Lupe nuts.
Was it on papyrus because you're old enough?
No, almost though. But this, and because I didn't like to write down my visions where people could find them. I don't know why. They were secret to me.
Yeah.
So I would write them on the door facing in the closet. I'd open the door and I'd write them inside on that wood.
Cool.
And I'd write things like, today I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought nobody would ever see them. And you really couldn't unless you opened it up and looked.
Yeah.
You'd be looking for them. One day Lupe said, why are you writing on that? I said, because it's secret.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which actually kind of reminds me, though, to say something about writing it down, though. Don't be secret necessarily. Some things could be.
Yeah.
But don't be shy.
Right.
Hey, I'm not going to be shy about what my goal is.
Yeah.
I especially need to tell people that I'm close to.
Yeah.
Why not? And I mean, and people that are going to help me. But Trace, I have one rule I want to, if I could sum up what I think about this thing. And I need to quote my most favorite saint, Indian saint. Because it does have to do with a little bit with letting go. And I think that's really part of this journey too. Because you really have to risk some things too. You got to be willing to do it.
Yep.
All right. So here's and this comes from Meher Baba. And I've told you this before, Trace, and Anybody that's heard Bobby McFerrin's song knows this phrase, but this actually came from Mayor Baba. And the phrase is, don't worry, be happy.
Mhm.
But, and Bobby McFerrin only quoted that because that's what he saw on the poster with Mayor Baba on it. But
Yeah.
that wasn't the whole phrase. Because here's what his whole phrase said, and this is what it was. It said first. No, it didn't say first. I said first. The whole phrase is this, quote, do your best. Then don't worry, be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And leave the results to God.
No.
And I always love that whole phrase together because it puts on me the responsibility to take the actions I need to take
Right.
to make my dream come true.
Yeah.
And then I've done everything that I can do. If I've really thought this out, planned this out, followed the guidance, I've done my best.
Yeah.
Now, really, I can sit back, not worry, and be happy. Because the truth about all of it is I can't control the results.
Yeah.
Because what I've already done is set it up by doing my best. I've predicted the results. But I can't control that. I can't control everybody's response or everything that happens in the universe. I can't control it. All I've done is predict it by what I did by doing my best. Now I
Right.
leave the results to God.
Yeah.
The universe, or however you want to envision that.
Right.
So don't worry, be happy. If you see somebody wearing that, remind them that there is a part to that phrase that puts some responsibility on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some responsibility on God and the universe. So you're not alone in the process. But you get the first responsibility.
Yeah.
So to me, when we talk about this, Trace, that's the stuff I think about. And I know that listening to you talk about it, and maybe me too, we make it sound easy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's easy.
No.
That's not what I'm trying to communicate. I just think it's doable.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's attainable. It is within the scope of what we are given as our talents as humans.
Yep.
And we can choose to do this or not.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just like we can choose to greet the day however we're going to greet it.
Mhm.
In every situation, we can choose. But that is hard to do.
Yeah.
It's within our power to choose to be positive or happy.
You know, one of the things that I found, in terms of just a practical step, and you already touched on it. As you were talking, I was listening to you, right? But I was also thinking at the same time, and I was thinking back to when I started my master's program. How was that different? Then when I did my specialist, then when I did my doctorate and my postdoc stuff, in logotherapy. Did I have something that grounded me, something practical? And I remember with my master's degree, I think it was a quote from Goethe. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And every day I'd say that, right? Every day I'd go through. That was like my mantra. So that kept me going. And then I had other ones, throughout the years. But you know what it was for my doctoral program? It's kind of paradoxical. That was real wordy, right? For the master's. For the doctoral, it was simply this: change is inevitable. Failure is not an option. That was it. And, part of it came from, failure is not an option, from Apollo 13. And I don't even know where change is inevitable came from, other than maybe my own life. But I think this is something you're absolutely right. When we think about our respective lives and whatever it is that we've accomplished, in comparison to some people, we've done nothing. In comparison to others, we've done great things. But whatever it is with our own pathway, we think about, there were some things that were not easy. And so many times people will look at professors, retired professors, people that have something, or they're doing something, they think, oh, it was so easy. For you? No, it wasn't easy for me. And it'll be easy enough if we sit down and talk with someone else who's having some real challenges right now, for them to understand, we know exactly what it feels like to be in the dark, right? We know exactly what it feels like to be depressed and anxious and, suicidal, whatever, right? We know what that's like. So you can't bullshit somebody who's already been there and done that.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you get into this, my war story or my horror story is worse than yours. It's not about that.
No.
But it is about being able to relate to somebody who is struggling with decisions or choices that they're making right now. Things are not going well. And being able to say, I know what that feels like. I know exactly what that experience was like for me. And then if we can communicate that back to them by asking that question, this is what it was like for me. Are you experiencing anything that's similar to that? So on that same page.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so if we can, then we're in a position to be able to say, look, trust me, here's the handhold, here's the foothold, just trust me, we'll get you to the top.
Trace, I remember a dark time in life when I felt very insecure in life. And I remember reading Aldous Huxley's The Darkness Visible.
Yep.
And I actually remember reading it and I was mad at him.
Yep.
Knowing now that that's actually a good response to that book.
Right.
Because that meant that I was on a pathway of getting better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you were in the pit that he was able to describe, you wouldn't be mad.
Yeah.
So anyway, but what I thought about when I was reading him, I was thinking, it's so nice to have the words of someone who's gone before.
Right.
Whatever that pathway may be for someone, that's a comfort.
Right.
To know that nearly everything is survivable.
Yeah.
Not only that, but you can thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And your world can turn into that world where you can then help.
Yeah.
And your dreams can come true.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think that may be a good time. As with most of our conversations from 25 years ago through till now, I have no idea how long this podcast has gone. I don't know. How long has it been?
It went along a good time.
Yeah, it did.
I think, well, we'll find out.
So this may be an answer to one of those questions that many times people will ask. How long does this paper need to be? How long does this speech need to be? How long, is it going to take? Well, it's going to take whatever it takes.
However long it takes.
However long it takes. And we know that some people will, sleep through part of it, fast forward through other parts of it. But one of the doors, I don't remember if it was Robbie Krieger or one of those guys was saying, when they took their records into producers before they were known, producers would take, and put, just kind of listen to these little blurps and blips and nope, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, nope, goodbye. Well, then look what happened to them.
Oh, that's right.
So I think that you and I are on the same page. This may be just the third episode of the Nomads of the Noetic podcast, but I see great things happening with this. And I see potential to help a lot of people, and at the same time, making connections and contacts with people that know far more than what we do in other areas.
That's right.
We're in this noetosphere, together.
That's right.
And again, we've said before, sometimes we'll be the teacher and other people will be the students, and other times those roles will be reversed. So
Keep watching.
Yeah.
Keep watching, and if you have things to tell us, please comment.
Agreed. Any other final words? I'll let you.
I just say many blessings to all.
Great. All right. We'll see you guys later.